Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Living Your Greatness. This is your host, Ben Mumme, and today we have a new guest to the show, and her name is Meghan Weir. So for those of you that don't know Meghan, she is a spiritual life coach, a hypnotherapist, and a business mentor. With certifications in hypnotherapy, yoga, meditation, and business, she helps you discover your inner power and share your unique gifts. Meghan guides deep transformations, helping you to remember your true self, your purpose, and how to contribute to the world. So Meghan, without further ado, welcome to the show. Super fired up to have you on today.
Thank you so much, Ben. I am so stoked to be here with you and to connect with your community.
Same here. Super stoked as well. Let's kind of get hopping in. Meghan, if you could just, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you spend your formative years growing up? And what inspired you to become a spiritual life coach, a hypnotherapist, and a business mentor?
Oh my goodness, that's a big question. Well, I grew up really tapped into my intuition, if you will. And I was very sensitive and just had this inner knowingness. And I really felt like that alien, like the odd one that didn't really fit in. And some things happened when I was younger where I kind of got disconnected from myself, my true essence, disconnected from my physical body, which kind of led me into a space of finding an eating disorder. So I was actually bulimic for a very long time. I was very unwell, and because I was so disconnected from my physical body, I actually became very disconnected from my true essence, my soul. And I intuitively knew that I had to get to the root of the matter as to why I had this eating disorder. But I didn't really follow that path right away because of the Western world. And so I went to my first counselor, and I had just finished my nursing career, actually. Not my nursing career, my nursing schooling, about to embark in my nursing career. And I realized, I can't help anybody until I help myself. And so I kind of came out of the closet with the eating disorder, which inspired me to go to a counselor. And at that time, I understand now, but the counselor basically said that he couldn't help me because it was beyond his scope of practice. He then referred me to an eating disorder clinic. And because my eating disorder wasn't, quote unquote, as bad, I then was denied from the eating disorder clinic. So you can imagine in that space with the therapist, like, oh my goodness, I'm too much. And then with the eating disorder, I'm not enough. So that really spiraled the eating disorder out of control. I went to my doctor. My doctor put me on antidepressants, where I became even more disconnected. And I want to preface, being a nurse for a very long time, I do know there's a time and space for medication. But I also knew that I didn't want to just take medication and try and get over this eating disorder. I wanted to understand what was causing it. So then that led me to finding different ways to support myself. So I learned about hypnotherapy. So I started working with a hypnotherapist, which was huge. I started working with coaches that were trained in neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy. I started working with therapists that were trained in somatics. And as a result from that, I was really able to get to the root cause, and I was able to reconnect with little Meghan and reconnect to my true essence. And yeah, so that's the long and the short of it. And in that space where I was so disconnected from myself and so disconnected from that beautiful soul that came here to do some significant work, I made a vow to myself that if I could really get back into alignment with my soul's mission, I would do everything in my power to help others do the same on their healing journey. So that's what led me into the work that I do today.
I love that story. Thanks for, sharing, your journey, as well as, some of the hardships there of, trying to seek that help after being self-aware. but then realizing that the path wasn't straight, and, navigating it to find the right, mental fitness tools or spiritual tools to really support you on, navigating it appropriately. Right. So something that I kind of want to lead to from here, I think you're really passionate based off what I've seen online, about energetic mastery as well as subconscious reprogramming and embodiment. So, these are some pretty big words, especially if someone's like, hey, I know those words, but I don't really know what they mean. So the next question I want to go with is, what do these words mean to you? And why do they favor someone's transformational journey?
Great question. Well, I'll go one by one. So for me, energetic mastery is a huge piece of my healing journey was when I found yoga and meditation, because I couldn't really articulate how I was able to move beyond the eating disorder, but it really comes down to reconnecting with yourself and getting back into your body. So through that, I found yoga. And then once I found yoga, I found Kundalini Yoga. And Kundalini Yoga was a huge game changer. And so Kundalini is definitely out there. For those that aren't familiar with it, you use a lot of breath work, mantra. You're really holding different positions to really, work with your chakra system to release emotional and energetic blocks. But as a result, this is where you learn to master your energy. And so Kundalini came into my world and it was like, what the heck is this? And I want more of it, because I was able to release. It's like you're able to release years of trauma without having to relive it. And so in terms of the energetic mastery, that's what I utilize for really coming back into my true essence, to come back to myself, to come back to my self-source power. And so energetic mastery is really learning to master your energy through different postures, through different movements, through different breath work. And that's what I utilize today for that. And when I speak about embodiments, it's so important to be the embodiment of your work. It's so important to practice what you preach and embody what you teach. And when we are out there doing this work and we are disconnected, or, we're not really in alignment with our values or in alignment with our belief systems, we can really do a lot of harm. And so when we come into the space of really embodying our work, that's where the magic is. And this is where you can truly help people. So becoming a master in that is everything. So those are what I'm very passionate about. And then when subconscious reprogramming came into my life, as I mentioned with hypnotherapy, it's just such a powerful tool, because 95% of our thoughts, our actions, our behaviors, our feelings stem from our subconscious mind. So you can imagine, and this can be from this lifetime, it can be passed down from generations, it can be passed down from past lives. So, subconscious reprogramming has been a game changer for me. And now I'm recently trained in rapid resolution therapy, which is next level. I'm literally taking people from being debilitated with anxiety, and in 2 sessions, 1 session, the anxiety is gone. So this is the power of working with the subconscious mind. And all of this work, the subconscious reprogramming, the embodiment that I speak of, and the energetic mastery, none of this, you have to relive any trauma, which is amazing for me. Talk therapy is amazing, and I still have a therapist that I go to and speak about things that are coming up for me, but we don't have to relive anything. We don't have to speak about what has happened in our past. We get to come into the space of moving beyond it without having to relive it. And that's what rapid resolution therapy does. So
I love that. Well, I appreciate, you answering that big question, right? Breaking down 3 pretty big words. And even leading at the end there to, rapid resolution therapy. I think that's good because, people do need to move forward and, not spend too much time in the back. I think I think it is healthy, in the past, if we spend no more than 5 minutes, if we are doing reflection to learn from our mistakes, move forward. But really, we should always be moving forward, right? Taking action, learning, growing. And, there's even a quote, I think, from even like a big investor, Warren Buffett, he talks about that, where if you ever ruminate or you think in the past, it shouldn't be more than 5 minutes, right? So that quick reflection piece, and then, okay, how do we learn? How do we move forward, right? So something that I want to, while we're here, talk about is, if you could give us more context of, because I know you're super fired up about it, what is rapid resolution therapy and how could it serve, someone to their fullest?
Mm-hmm. So rapid resolution therapy is a combination of working with the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. We're working with visualization, we're working with meditation, we're working with hypnosis, and it is very light, and it's very, at times can be quite humorous. And so the purpose of it is to take someone who might be having mental disturbances or have had trauma or have limiting beliefs, limiting decisions, any blocks and barriers of self, to really support the individual in moving beyond that without, again, having to relive any significant events. So Dr. John Connolly is the person that created this, and he can take someone who has been raped in one session, heal through that within 90 minutes. I'm not saying I'm able to do that at this time, but it's incredible to witness his work. And it's incredible to be a person to learn through him and to be able to facilitate this type of healing. I'm blown away by it. It's, I've witnessed countless transformations that he has created and supported individuals on and with, and to be able to support people with RRT, I just feel so blessed. Honestly, like I said, I made a vow. I made a vow that if I could help someone, one person, I'm here to create a ripple effect, like not only within myself, but my community, the collective, and generations to come. And it starts with one individual, right? So if I can impact one person's life, and if I can support them in creating rapid results, then I'm here for it. There's no reason why. I mean, again, nothing wrong with talk therapy, but I would go to my counselor back in the day, and I would go there and I didn't want to talk about what was going on, and so I would lie, right? It's just like, how are you doing with your eating disorder? Oh, I'm fine, like it's done, right? That's not helpful. But with all of these different therapies now, we don't have to talk about what's occurring or what's not occurring. We just talk about what the problem is, what the stuck data is, if you will, in our subconscious mind, and it supports the individual moving beyond that without having to relive anything. So I'm super fired up about it, and I'm really excited to see where it takes the lives that I'm here to support and impact.
That's awesome. Well, you know what? We're lucky to have your leadership there, especially because, you've even said it yourself, but, one tool could work. Meanwhile, another tool may not work for someone else, right? And so there's so many tools out there to support our mental fitness. I'm a huge advocate of mental fitness, to really equip yourself with the best tools possible, right? To be strong, resilient, and emotionally well, right? And so something that I kind of want to dive towards is, I know there's a lot of other tools that you're passionate about, right? And this is just one example of one, that you're passionate to lead in. But what about, there's another one that I know you speak about. It's called timeline therapy. So, what exactly is that? And, why does it work?
Timeline therapy is so cool. And it's before I found RRT, that was like my go-to. And so timeline therapy, again, you're working with your subconscious mind. And so let's say you're experiencing fear in your life, right? So, it can be any type of fear. I'm just using fear as an example. But we basically tap in and ask your unconscious mind, when was the first experience that you had this fear? And so we go back to that time. And again, it can be from past life, it can be generational, it can be usually between the age of 0 and 7. That's when the significant imprints are created. And so we go back to that time and we connect with, we take the person above their timeline. So they're floating above their timeline. So we're really working with the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind. So floating above the timeline, getting back to that event, taking the learnings from that event, and then moving those learnings into the future. So that fear dissolves within that time and space, and they learn they learn the lessons from that experience, and so they can move it to apply to their future learnings. It's hard to articulate timeline therapy, but you basically take those learnings and apply it to your future learnings and future self, and move beyond it in time and space. It's very powerful.
Right.
I utilize the timeline therapy with my one-on-one clients, but I also host breakthrough days. So a lot of the work that we do in breakthrough days is working with timeline therapy and other modalities within the NLP and subconscious reprogramming.
Right. And what would be an example of, timeline therapy, like a concrete example for people to visualize it and really connect?
I had a client that had a very traumatic upbringing. He was riddled with a lot of anxiety and depression. And of course, I always check in to ensure that this is within my scope of practice. I take this work very seriously. But this person had a lot of trauma growing up, and he was experiencing debilitating anxiety, depression, and what his main goal was to be happy. That's what his big desire was to be happy. And so I took him through the process of timeline therapy with multiple things that he's experienced, different limiting beliefs that he has created as a result from these traumatic events. So I would utilize timeline therapy to support him in moving beyond these limiting beliefs. And as a result, he is like living life free from the anxiety, from the depression. He's happy. He is free. He is now moving beyond what his original goal was to be happy. And now he's in the space of really bringing his innovations to life. So that is the power of timeline therapy.
I appreciate that example. I think it goes to with resetting like the mindset. That's like the outcome that obviously came from that. And that's not easy, right? When there's fear, right? And you brought up fear before, it could feel uncomfortable. It could also feel like there's a lot of discomfort, right? Going back and then making that shift and making those changes, and, another question that I'm curious to ask you is, how do you help individuals, trust their soul's guidance, embodies wisdom for self-led embodiment and, leadership?
Yeah, so I'm so passionate about this because, as a society, we're taught to go outside of ourselves for the answers and to really not essentially disconnect from trusting ourselves, and the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because I was so disconnected for so long. I knew at a very young age what it felt like to be connected. And then I learned for a very long time what it felt like to be disconnected. And when I was disconnected and when I was dissociated, it felt so uncomfortable. It felt so foreign. And when I was able to come back to myself through yoga and meditation and through doing this subconscious work and through really coming into a space of embodiment, I know what it feels like to be here now. And this is where our channel is. This is where our power is. And when we have this power open, we open our channel up to divinity, right? And so often, especially in the world of addiction, we're just so disconnected from our truth, from our power. And oftentimes when we are in that addiction, it's because we're afraid of our power. And so if we can utilize various tools to come back to our truth, to come back to our center, and to really develop this self-trust and this deep connection within ourselves, you will become unstoppable. And so how I lead people in this work is, when I'm working with my clients, I always like to say that we start from the bottom up, because if we're starting in the head, this is great to do the mindset work, but if our body isn't online, if our nervous system isn't online, we're not going to be able to continue to hold all the things that we're calling in, right? So I am a huge believer in I think in my world, what I'm seeing everywhere is nervous system support, nervous system regulation. But this is what is so important, is to foundation is really starting from the bottom up and getting people into that regulated state. So I'm utilizing, I have an abundance of tools that I use to support people with. RRT is really effective in supporting people with their nervous system. Kundalini Yoga is, but all of these things allows you to, clear out the noise, if you will, and tune into the voice. And so, yeah, that was a long-winded answer to your question, but yeah.
Right. And that makes me think too, you talked about bottom up, right? And there's always a start, right? And I think that also leads maybe to self-awareness or connection or feeling, right? And so a question I have from that is, what role does self-awareness play in creating depth, compassion, and empowerment in one's life?
Everything. I am a firm believer that the first step to create change in your life is awareness, right? So without that awareness, we cannot cultivate change. And so self-awareness is everything. And again, to come back to Kundalini, like Kundalini is known as the yoga of awareness. So it really allows you to turn off all of this external noise that's occurring and tune into your voice. And it really just allows you to come into the space of enhancing your emotional intelligence, developing this strong sense of self-awareness. And so through that, you can cultivate more compassion, more kindness, more forgiveness, right? For self. You can cultivate this deep sense of connection and develop this deep sense of self-trust, which then in turn starts to develop into the space of self-love, right? The term self-love is so complex, but really the first steps to developing that self-awareness is to learn how to start to show up for yourself, because the more you show up for yourself, and the more you honor yourself and acknowledge yourself when you do show up for yourself, the more you're able to develop that self-trust, which in turn develops that self-awareness. So.
Right. And then how do we develop self-love, especially in a society right now where people are always comparing to others or they're feeling, imposter syndrome? Yeah. So I guess my question is, how do you integrate self-love in your life?
Yeah, it's fascinating because I never used to be able to look at myself in the mirror. I would get ready in the dark. I would be intimate in the dark. I would delete any photo that was taken of me. Like, I hardly have any photos of me when I was younger. I would just delete them all. So I was riddled with self-hatred. And I laugh now, but I was in and out of suicidal ideation. And so to see where I am now, I am proof that it's possible. I'm now able to look at myself in the mirror, get ready in the lights. I'm able to look at myself naked in the mirror. And so how I've been able to do all this is just, the small atomic habits that I've created over the period of my life since healing. And I do that just by really acknowledging everything I do. Like when a dog, you ask a dog to sit and you praise it and it just wants to keep serving, right? It's just like, that's exactly what I did with myself. It's like, okay, I looked at myself in the mirror today. I'm so proud of you, Megan. I got ready, no longer in the dark. I praise myself for that. Anything that I started to do that was really moving myself towards where I knew was possible for me rather than away from, I continued to just give myself praise and just tell myself, I'm so proud of you, Megan. I'm so proud of you. So that has allowed me to really come into the space of really, truly loving myself. It's through that.
I love that story. Thanks for being so brave and courageous and, sharing, the challenges there, but then how you navigated. And I'm big on atomic habits as well. I've said it a lot on this podcast with putting in those reps, being deliberate, being intentional, constantly evolving and kind of shaping, your future self of who you're becoming. But a question that I'm curious to ask you about is, for the benefit of my listeners, who are tuning in, what are some writing prompts or even quality questions that someone could ask themselves, to thrive and become emotionally and spiritually fit?
What are some questions? I'm huge on forgiveness. Guilt and shame can really can be huge drivers in our lives. We're all human. We're here to learn and evolve and grow. And through that, we learn through the mistakes we've made. There are so many things that I've done in my life that I'm not proud of. And I've come to the space of learning to forgive myself because that's where I was in that time and space of my life. So if you really want to get deep, I would invite you to ask yourself, like, where am I holding guilt and shame in my life? And how can I come into the space of truly forgiving myself? Because that was a past version of myself and that doesn't define who I am today, but that is going to really allow you to move beyond that. And you can do that in relationship to yourself. You can do that in relationship to money. You can do that in relationship, whatever you might be working on or working through in your life. But I would invite you to go there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think those questions will serve everyone. I'm going to add that actually to my list of prompts, for when I do journal writing. So I appreciate that, because all of us at some time have guilted ourselves, right? And not treated ourselves how we should be treated, how we would treat someone else, which is sometimes so sad, right? So giving that self-love, giving that forgiveness, not being too hard, right? So something I want to move to, something more light, what is a favorite quote that you live by?
Oh, it's Joan of Arc. I'm not afraid I was born to do that. Sorry, I'm not afraid I was born to do this. That is, I actually have a tattoo on my arm with it. But that is something that really motivates me. In the world of subconscious reprogramming, it doesn't really work because the subconscious mind doesn't acknowledge not, but I still love it. I'm not afraid I was born to do this, which really just inspires me to continue to show up for myself and to show up for my big picture visions, because I have a lot, and my deepest desires, because my soul has some serious shit to do, and I'm here to move beyond that fear. So
I love that quote. Definitely a good one in terms of, following your purpose, following your destiny, and not being afraid to take action, right? To move forward and follow your heart, right? So something that I want to lead to from here, this is a question that I ask a lot of my guests on my show, but the whole purpose of this podcast is really to inspire people, millions of people across the world, to achieve greatness and enhance their overall personal well-being. So what is your definition of greatness?
my definition of greatness is to be the embodiment of who you came here to be, to really live your life in alignment with your values, in alignment with your beliefs, and really honoring who you are at your core. So many times in my life, I seeked validation. I wanted approval. I wanted people to love me, and accept me. And the more I came into that energy, the more disconnected I came from myself, right? And so in the conversation of greatness, I think, is just really just being the embodiment of who you came here to be, and really owning your power, owning your greatness, and shining your light from that sacred space.
I love that. That's beautiful. Super beautiful definition. Essentially being your authentic self and, not being afraid to lead and kind of showcase it. Right. So super powerful. And something that I want to lead from there is, you know, now that you have a good feel of my podcast and the show and kind of what it's all about, who is a future guest, someone that you know personally that you would love to see on this show?
Mm. Jess Bergio is incredible. I just love Jess. She was a mentor of mine inside of Fast Foundations. She's now actually a client of mine. She is such a light, such a powerhouse, and she is, yeah, here to create some serious magic in the world. And so I would highly, highly recommend connecting with Jess.
I love that. Well, I'll check out Jess's work, see what she's all about. I trust you that she'll be a good fit for the show. And when that time comes, I'll be sure to, share that with you as well. Right. It will be nice gift to also give back, not only to my listeners or myself, but also to you. So before we kind of, clock off here, I want to, you know, showcase to my listeners, where's the best place, for them to connect with your work or, find you or reach out to you? Where should they go?
Yes, thank you so much. I am on Instagram, so I'm at the Meghan Weir. You can find me there. You can also find me on my website, so megan-weir.com. And yeah, that's where you can find me. I am on other platforms, but I'm predominantly on Instagram. So
Awesome, Megan. So I will be sure, to put that in the podcast notes, the YouTube notes, so everyone knows where to go. And, before we kind of, sign off on this conversation, are there anything else that you want to add to the conversation, before we leave? And yeah, go for it. You have the mic.
I just invite you really to stay true to you. It's so easy, the conversation around that came up, like imposter syndrome and the comparison piece. And I invite you to put the blinders on, because it's so easy to be influenced from the external noise that's going on. And it's so easy to come into the space of questioning, like, who am I to do this? Or why am I here to do this? And you wouldn't have been guided to do what you do if it wasn't meant for you. And so I invite you to really trust whatever, I call it the downloads, but whatever taps or nudges or ideas that are coming to the forefront of your mind, I invite you to trust that, because it's meant for you. And the world needs your light. The world needs your magic and your medicine. And I believe that this wouldn't be coming to you or coming through you if it wasn't meant for you. So I invite you to lean in, take inspired action, and create this incredible ripple effect that you are here to create, so we can, create this incredible shift in humanity, because we need it now more than ever.
I appreciate those final words. And Megan, I just want to take this last little bit of time, to thank you for being here. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your wisdom. And thank you for all the invaluable insights that you've shared on today's show.
Thank you so much. It was such a privilege and honor to be here with you, Ben. And yeah, so grateful to be connected.